Hi, hello there, this is Matt and Ben from Digital Spy, and we're here to chat about The Order 1886, which is a PS4 third-person shooter exclusive out in early 2015. And we both played like a good, is it like 20-25 minute segment?
Yeah, about half an hour, probably, yeah.
Yeah, and it's a segment where basically sort of kind of set on an airship where like kind of the four hero knights kind of infiltrate this airship. And it was quite an actually interesting section because it kind of showed off at various different kind of things that were going to be in the game, I think, as a whole, and kind of demonstrated how it probably would play generally. And I think by and large we're on the same page in the sense that it seems like a very like ordinary shooter, but a very pretty one. And I think that's kind of the way it kind of presents itself, at least in this kind of like hands-on.
Yeah, I mean, you know, visually it's really striking. It's impressive how great it actually looks. You know, it feels like, you know, it's taking advantage of the kind of the PS4 hardware. But having said that, you know, the part where you play the game, it doesn't really stand out. It doesn't really do anything special, at least from the 13 minutes or so that we played.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of interesting because it's actually a well-paced section. So you kind of like, you're playing the knights and you kind of like infiltrate silently through this kind of like the belly of the ship. And you kind of like, there's like a stealth section, then there's like QTs when you're kind of like fighting in this cockpit, and then you're doing these mini games open doors, and then later on there's this combat section. And I think like it's actually well kind of like paced and kind of well structured in that way, but none of it particularly was I don't know, anything like stand out. So like combat, for example, like I think I thought it was like there's nothing really new in terms of like weaponry. Like there's actually some cool twists on like familiar things. So you had like a machine gun with like a blunderbuss kind of like secondary that would kind of like, you can turn around the corner and shotgun guys. But yeah, it just generally feel a little bit clunky, I think.
Yeah, I think I had particular issue with the cover mechanics. I didn't really feel like the cover. I didn't think it was that reliable. Like there were times where, you know, I wanted to go into cover, but I wasn't sure if the game would let me go into cover or not, or if it would work correctly. And I actually died a couple of times trying to fumble around with that, which was a little bit frustrating.
Yeah, yeah. And I think what's actually quite interesting is that even though it's well paced, it's all very kind of linear and very kind of like straightforward. So like the combat actually section was probably the area where you had most to play with. Yeah. And every other section was very much, you're going to go from A to B and maybe. So like the stealth sections, for example, they're very much like you just watch enemy pass. And there's actually like a stealth section where if you didn't do it correctly, like if you didn't like take them out silently from behind, you would die, which you had, didn't you?
Yeah.
And also what really kind of actually, I don't know, I found very strange was there's actually quite an interesting sniper sequence, kind of like halfway, kind of maybe 3/4 of the way through. And you kind of have to, you're on like on comms and you're talking to your teammates, and it's like, well, there's rebels on board, you need to find out which they are, and basically if they don't have the insignias, or if they do have the insignias, I can't remember which it was, they're the rebels.
Yeah. And
so you have to like look through the crowd, and it's kind of like a neat little idea, but it basically just then told you which ones they were.
Yeah.
It didn't make you make up your own mind necessarily.
I liked the concept of that, actually. Yeah. I liked the concept of that objective, but it was just a case of, you know, like you just had to stare at them for a while, like through the scope, and then it said, and then the guy was just like, yep, he's a rebel. Yeah, and yeah, there's no like, he didn't trust you to make that decision for yourself. Yeah. And I feel that's kind of like generally what I got a sense from this game is like, well, you're just kind of along for the ride more than actually making any real impact. And I think that kind of goes well with the fact that this is a very cinematic game, and it's a very good cinematic game. Like, I think the actual cutscenes, like facial animations, kind of the way it kind of seamlessly blends between like the gameplay sections and kind of actually going watching like cutscenes and stuff. It's all incredibly well done. Like, really, really good looking game, and really kind of well executed in that regard. And I think actually that's where the game is going to kind of be like. It could be a bit more of a hit than I probably would hope. I hope it's going to be, because I think the universe that they've crafted and kind of like the story that they're hinting at could be quite interesting. I'm definitely intrigued by it because, like, I mean, obviously the preview that we played, there wasn't a lot of context necessarily. Yes. It was in the middle of the game. You know, we didn't really have an introduction to what was going on and who the characters are exactly. But you know, from the glimpse that I got, like, I definitely wanted to know more about everything.
Yeah, and it's like I always like the idea of like alternate history, kind of concept, like kind of universes and ideas, and it's kind of got this cool steampunk like aesthetic. And I've kind of what I've heard elsewhere, it's like there's like monsters in this world, and the knights that you're playing as, they're all kind of like apparently they're immortal, and they're kind of there's something in this world that's made them be that way. And I think that could be like what really could be interesting about the game, because otherwise everything else is just very ordinary. Like I did actually really enjoy it. and I probably would play the full game and probably enjoy what's there, but it's nothing like you haven't seen from a third-person shooter in the past like 5 years or so. Like there's really nothing different here.
I think you like it more than me then, because I mean I've not dismissed the game completely. But as it stands, I wouldn't probably buy the full game.
Yeah.
But I'm still open to being convinced. Like, you know, if I played a little bit more of it, and you know, if it turns out to be, you know, decent, then my mind will be changed.
Yeah, yeah. I'm hoping there's probably something else here from what we haven't seen, because I've seen like not only this like hands-on segment, I've also kind of like seen it in like kind of like hands-off demos, and also another hands-on demo at E3 in 2014. And it's just everything about the game just kind of reinforces what I've played and what I've seen. Really, kind of that it's a very, very beautiful, great looking game.
Yeah.
Beautifully constructed, but otherwise a very straightforward shooter.
Yeah.